Boker Tov, Yom Tov, Zarim Tovim, and Laila Tov. Good morning, good day, good afternoon, good evening. I hope this finds you well no matter where you are at. This is Carrie, and we are going to be covering a verse today in the New Testament about something that Yahshua said when he was actually on the cross, and I think that you will find it very fascinating. It's important that we take in consideration when we are looking at scriptures that when we look through them, the lenses should be through the Aramaic and the Hebrew. Aramaic is the divine feminine portion, and the Hebrew is the divine masculine. They have meant to be unified as into one, but they were divided. And the reason why they were divided was as we are dual in nature as ourselves within the system of duality, and our brains even are separated into the left and right hemispheres, we needed to have a way to be instructed in both the linear thinking and the spiral thinking, as this is in the form of creation. And so on the spiritual side of things, so not only do we see it in the material with the Fibonacci sequencing and the golden mean ratio, but we can see this as it translates to spirituality as well within the divine feminine and divine masculine principles within us. So it is meant to be an overlayment. So we are going to be taking a look at the verse in Aramaic through the Peshitta, and then we will be bringing the Hebrew into it so that we can get the fullness of the spectrum of the two becoming one, as we are now learning that the oneness unity is truly the Mashiach, the Christ anointing that has been laying dormant within all of us, that is waiting to be activated for those who would seek and find it. So here we have Matthew 27:46 that we're going to be looking at today. And about the ninth hour, Yahshua cried with a high voice, Eloah, Eloah, why hast thou forsaken me? And by the way, Eloah is the Aramaic word for God, where we have different ones in the that you would see with the tetragrammaton in the Hebrew, but Eloah is the word in Aramaic. So let's dive in. Let's take a look at what's going on. And the first word, it gets going right off the bat with the very first word. When we see the first word, it says that face, hypocrite, presence bread. I find this interesting because presence bread you would know this as the showbread that was in the wilderness in the tabernacle on the table of showbread. That's what this is referring to. So connecting it to something that is within the tabernacle of the wilderness is very important, because the tabernacle in the wilderness is actually a symbol of ourselves. From the laver and the altar. The altar helps us burn up our beast ego. The laver allows us to have the mirror reflection to see what's going on if we still have beast ego or ego that needs to be burned up. We go between the laver and the ego quite a bit before we can enter into the holy place where the menorah is, the table of showbread, and the altar of incense. And again, these are all elements that are within us that we are discovering. This allows us to get prepared to be able to move into the Holy of Holies, where the Ark of the Covenant, the Ark of the Testimony, the Ark of the Becoming, the chariot throne of the cherubim resides. And this is the sacred place of our heart. So right off the get-go, we can see that this is having to do something that is much greater than just what was written in English. And you're going to see between the letters how truly fascinating this is. So the root of it is Aleph, Pei, Aleph. And again, this is through the Aramaic font. I use and show the Hebrew for convenience. But it should be known that Hebrew and Aramaic are the same letter for letter. So an Aleph in the Aramaic, or also known as Syriac, is the same as the Aleph as it is in Hebrew. So that makes it a lot easier for us to be able to see what's going on. So taking a look at this, we have the words, again, face, hypocrite, and presence bed. And if you remember, we were looking at, in the wise and foolish virgins, we were talking about that which they were receiving, which also had the word, it was take, receive, it was nasav, take and receive, and also hypocrite. And a hypocrite is one who plays a part. And this is dealing totally with our ego here, because that is the hypocrite part of us. That's not who we truly are. But it's the face of the hypocrite, the face of the ego that we're discussing here. So when we look at what was deleted, the aleph was deleted from the root and the yod was added. But on the front, on the suffix or the prefix side, we have the vav lamed that have been added. So vav lamed on the prefix and the yod on the suffix. So what's going on here? Well, if this is the face of the hypocrite of the ego that we're looking at, the vav lets us know that in humility we are connecting to Mother, and there is instruction that is coming to us, to the face of the hypocrite, in order to give it power. Yod is a representation of power and a vision that gives us means and direction to go through the door of our inward man, to reveal that which makes us weak and feeble so we can deliver ourselves from it. And we see that right here in the word hypocrite, which is our ego. So what are we doing? Well, by connecting in humility, the instruction is coming, the teaching shepherd of light, that brings us the living water teachings, which is the door to open up this revelation that we are all one. And it will come through the speaking of the mouth that brings forth this revelation, a mouth that has been pierced. It has the dagesh. So this piercing has to do with germination of a seed that has been planted, because that's what the sacred languages are all about, is giving us this seed vision to deal with our hypocrite selves, which is our ego. So in dealing with our ego here that is being instructed, there's something else that we need to discuss before we move on. The lamed aleph pei, these three letters right here, are the gematria for aleph. Aleph, as spelled as aleph lamed pei, is the constituent letters that make up the symbol aleph. This is the huge difference between the English language and the Hebrew and Aramaic, is that the letter A in English has no meaning to it. It's just an A. It needs to be strung together with other letters to make up a word that has a definition. But in Aramaic and Hebrew, the aleph symbol is actually spelled by letters that come together to form it. That's why we say that Hebrew and Aramaic is written in a form of shorthand, a code of light that is begging us to dig it out to see what's going on. So right here we have the gematria of the letter symbol aleph. So when we take a look at aleph, one of the other words that's also in here is a pei lamed aleph. Pei lamed aleph means to be surpassing or extraordinary, to separate, to distinguish, to be great, difficult, and wonderful. And this is amazing because we're already talking about the ego, which separates us, but there's also, in the process of separation, is this distinguishing of something that is wonderful that is going to happen. So going back to this word with the face of the hypocrite, this is something that is wondrous that is happening to that which has been set apart. That's really fascinating. Then if we go into the word aleph itself, let's take a look at all of the meanings of the aleph that are contained within the symbol, the single digit symbol of aleph. So here you've heard me say that it has to do with, we've talked about 1,000. This is the Christ anointing. If you look on a Hawkins scale, the Hawkins goes from 0 to 1,000 and is from the alpha to the omega. Alpha is the aleph, so alpha is the Greek for the Hebrew aleph, and omega is Greek for the tav. So when we go from 0 or 1 to 1,000, we're representing the aleph in its fullness. So even at the tav, which is the top of the Christ consciousness scale of 1,000, it is still contained as one, as the Hebrew letter aleph. Aleph is so big, it is the encompassing of everything. So it is the first letter. It means 1,000. And the ox head is actually the paleo pictograph form of the letter. And what is this containing? So we just saw that it has 1,000. What else does it have? So it's talking about cattle, but it also means a family. And then a yoking and taming of a beast. And when we trace it back, we have the word that means to learn. Going deeper, to learn and to teach. This is the primitive root. This is the very root, the static root of to learn and to teach. Pretty amazing to see this, to become familiar with. And it is associated to as family. So all of that is contained in this very first word that talks about the face of the hypocrite. So we are learning, we are being tamed, we are being yoked. This is for a wondrous sign that is going to happen to the face of the hypocrite that is going to be given power. Now moving on to the next word, we have, let me pull this up here. So then we have 9. Now, I want you to see something here. If you notice that John Etheridge is the green font and the purple is King James, and both of them say nothing about face, hypocrite, or presence spread. They are saying end about. End about. Both of them are saying this. So they're totally leaving out what was written as far as the face of the hypocrite, the face of the ego that is meant to be instructed here. Because again, they had to have a presentation of Yahshua in a way that would remove him from the face of humanity in that which we all deal with, because he was born of flesh. He was a flesh man walking around, which means he had to deal with ego. So they had to hide this, so that we would put him in a divinity state far above, as if this was something that we could never attain, which he had to deal with ego as well. So when we jump into the word 9, 9 is a tav, sheen, ein. So in this place of the tav, sheen, ein, you can see that it's static in form. And one of the things that if we don't realize that there's a gematria that is involved in the languages, you are going to miss something that is critical on this. So we're talking about the 9th hour, but yet this is the number 9 here. Tav, sheen, ein. And the number 9 is the Hebrew letter tet. Tet is the wrestle. It is the wrestle in the basket, in the mud of the world, where we wrestle the seraphic message in the system of duality. We either connect to it or we don't, and we continue wrestling in the basket, in the mud of the world, in the system of duality before we rise above it. Now the seraphic messenger, the seraphim, it was translated as serpent, but it means one who is burning. The seraphim are known as the burning ones. So this is connected directly to the wrestle that we must all endure in the system of duality. And in this place, because there is nothing added and deleted from the root, it is in its static form, which means it's in 0 point. It has no distortion. There's nothing been added on the right or the left. So it is in the place of 0 point. And what do we see here? We see the mark of the covenant of the consuming fire that will give one the ability to see what 0 point is. But we have to deal with the face of the hypocrite first and be empowered to realize that that is what is making us weak. But the covenant that marks us exempt from being judgment, because we no longer judge, it is the process of the consuming fire that will give us the ability to see what we need to elevate our lower flesh, which is connected to the ego. You will find that it is also interesting that we have the sheen ein here, we have it in the next word, and then we also have it in Yeshua's name. And so within this, it's the consuming fire that sees. The consuming fire that sees, because the ein is a paleo meaning of the word eye. So that takes us into the word for hour. And in this word for hour, So now we're going into the 0 point hour. The root of this is Shin Ein Tav Aleph. Shin Ein Tav Aleph. But you can see that the Tav Aleph has been removed, and we have the Yod Nun. Now I find this again extremely fascinating, that this has to do with hour here. What was fascinating to me was what they dropped off, because in the process of what they dropped off and what they added with the Yod Nun, this is the constituent letters, the Ein Yod Nun is the constituent letters that have come together to form the symbol Ein. I love this. It's so amazing to see the difference of what's going on it. So Ayin, which is a word, it's a Hebrew word, but it is the spelling of the symbol, means an eye. So again, open after sleep, or keep awake, as it's connected to. And as we go all the way down, it also is a mental state of being awake. So an eye, literally, by analogy, the fountain is the eye of the landscape. But it's connected to many more things. So in connecting to it, it's connected to the physical, also figurative of the mental and spiritual faculties. The eyes is showing mental qualities, perhaps even arrogance. It is used as in the phrase, the apple of the eye, a figure of beauty, as affected by sleep, as in weeping, in wheels, of beasts, of idols, of a man, physical organ, the eye. So when we take a look at the spelling of it, the Ein Yod Nun, starting out with the fire that consumes, that gives us the power to overcome our fallen flesh, will give us the eye to see, the fountain of the landscape, that which we think about, which we heed, which gives us the power to overcome our fallen flesh in the activity of life in order to propagate, in order to produce an heir. This is a very big word, and again, it's connected to the Tet, the wrestle in the mud of the basket of the world, where we wrestle with the seraphic message of fire that will give us the ability to see, the eyes to see. Moving on. Then we have the word to cry aloud or to appeal to. And in this, it is a kuf, ein, aleph. So this crying aloud, again, is in its static position. Nothing has been added. Nothing has been taken. So in other words, there is, in this crying aloud, it is in the static position of 0 point. There is no right or left-hand side distortion. So that means that this is in the place of neutrality. So this crying aloud had nothing to do with either the right or the left, of the good, of the evil, of the light, of the dark. This has to do with the place of 0 point. Again, wrestling, giving the eye to see the place of 0 point where we compress light within the circle of time, through that which once was hidden, now being revealed, the narrow path between the two that gives us the eye to see the power that we need to elevate our fallen flesh so that we can enter into the place of one. So it's pretty amazing to see that this is talking about consuming that what we need to, so that we can see the process of that which is calling out to us to become one and having no distortions. Then we have Yahshua's name here itself. And again, as you can see, the Shin Ein is already within the word, and we've already been talking about Shin Ein in previous two words here, the Shinine and the Shinine. So in looking at the word Shinine, we're going to go and look at the root of Yeshua's name, to cry out for help. But it also is to be free, used only causatively and reflexively to halu, for help or freedom from some trouble. That is part of his name. The other portion of his name is Yasha. So again, we have the Shin Ein, and the difference between the Shua and this word is that this one does not have the Vav in the middle of it. So the Shua, the Shin Ein, we already looked at in the previous two words. So when we look at Yasha, to deliver, it means to be open, wide, or free, to be safe, causatively to free or succor. So succor is to help in the time of need, to come to someone's aid. So the difference on this one is that he's been given the power. He's been given the power as he went through the fire to have the eyes to see. So that is what's contained within the frequency of Yahshua, which again, every word has a frequency that we can attach to in becoming. Since we are all one, we carry this frequency in becoming. So really, we can honor the man who came before, the first fruits of the first fruits, to be able to become in the likeness of his image through the frequency of what his name means. And Yod Shin is also contained in here, which means a being of substance, that which exists, Yish. There is a lot within the name of Yeshua. And then we come into crying with a high voice. This is the word to call out, and here's the root of it. It is kuf lamed, to call out. It's with a voice. And you can see that there's been a bet added in front and an aleph on the back. The letter bet means to build spiritually, but it also means inside. So this is a voice on the inside that is calling out. It is calling out to become one. So remember, we were talking at the very beginning that this was talking about the face of the hypocrite, which is the ego, and there's a calling out that is going forth on the inside to become one. And how do we do that? Well, we build ourselves through the 222, Bet Tav, because Bet and Tav are both contained within the Hebrew letter Bet, through the constituent letters. It's the second letter of the alphabet and the last, which means the inside covenant, where we compress light within the circle of time, finding the narrow path, where we are instructed through the teaching shepherds of light, which is in the language of light, which is calling out to us to become one on the inside, so that we are no longer the face of the hypocrite. Remember, this was all about instructing us about being an actor as an hypocrite. And this is the instruction in the way of one. Then we have the word to high, which means to exalt. To be high or exalted or to rise. This is the Hebrew form of the word. Again, the divine masculine approach. To rise or to raise. So to rise or to raise, look at that. So it's a voice that's crying out for the inside for us to become one, which then is to exalt and raise up the principle of oneness. And then we have ma, which is actually a Hebrew word that means 100, the hundredfold measure. So this is, the resh is the poor and the destitute that are being raised up to be the first fruit leaders, to be the chief, that have gone through the waters of chaos to the hidden waters of Father's Shalom, where they've reached the hundredfold measure of the teachings in becoming one. This is the exalted message that the hypocrite, the ego, must learn. Then we have the word amar, we amar. And Amar is say, speak, announce, and affirm. This is the same root that we get the word for lamb. And the lamb, following the lamb wherever he leads, it's this, the only difference is it's Amar from Amarah. The lamb has an aleph on the backside. And again, remember that all of this is exalting and lifting up the way of one. What's calling out to us from the inside is to become one. Well, now we have, in looking at this is Amar that we are going to be attaching to, say, speak, announce, affirm, which is also a Hebrew word for word, to become one. And this is connecting to mother, which pierces us, being teachable and humble. We literally have the word for mother here, and to the poor and the destitute that are to be raised up to become first fruit leaders. So again, this word, if we're connecting to it, is saying, speaking, announcing, and affirming. So if Yahshua is speaking, saying, affirming, and announcing, what is he saying next to us? Through the measurement of mother to raise others up. Because again, it's about exalting us and lifting up oneness so that we can overcome and learn the instruction of the hypocrite. So now we see twin words, and I find this incredible that this is spelled this way. Because normally, when we see the word Aloha, it's spelled Aleph Lamed He Aleph. The root is Aleph Lamed He. So what Etheridge decided to do was to go ahead and put the word God, but not the way that it is written here. And you'll see why that's so amazing. And then you can see that King James actually put a phrase that he was saying, which is unusual that they would actually put the phrase that's in there. But it doesn't help us if we don't know what's being said. And again, it's never meant for us to be just on surface value of looking at the words. These languages are meant to be studied and excavated word by word, letter through letter. And if you just do the surface cursory glance, you are going to have translations and you're going to have meanings that are all over the place that totally take you away from the depth in which Father is trying to present. Mother presents to us the surface value of the words, because in our maturity we are at the place where we can go deep. Well, now I'm taking you into the deep waters, the deep diving of the Father's teaching to see what truly was being said for those who had the eyes to see and the ears to hear the words that Yahshua was actually saying when he was in the process of dying in his crucifixion. So when we take a look, it says that it's God, God. But again, Hebrew and Aramaic are meant to be married as into one. So instead of it being Aleph Lamed He, Allah, we have Ayil, Ayil. So in Ayil, this is a meaning, it's more than just a ram. But it should be connecting in your mind to the Aleph. This means strength, anything strong. It can be a chief politically, a ram from the strength, a pilaster, which is a strong support. And a pilaster is a strong support. A pillar is a Hebrew idiom for priests. And it can be an oak or any other strong tree. So a strong support and strength. So when we are looking at this, whenever you see things doubled, we've always been told that the doubling effect means that it's doubly important. But what we didn't know and what wasn't shared to us, that this is a representation of mother and father. This is both entities. So if there's a truly, truly, it would be truly mother says and truly father says. So this is strength of mother, strength of father, which are the pilasters and my support. My strength, and it's not even this, it's the father of strength, or the mother of strength and the father of strength. And what do we see here? The reason why they would say that it is God is because Aleph Lamed is the Hebrew word for God, but it has the Yod that's on the inside. So this is Mother God, you put strength within me. You gave me the power, means, and direction to go on the inside to deliver me from my weakness within. Father of strength, you gave me your vision to deliver me from the place that I was weak on the inside. As strong leader teaching shepherds, that is what you have done for me. And then we have the word, which is just memnun in the root. This is also a word that means to be a part of, and it is also the word for manna. And we can see it actually in its written form here, but we need to take a look and to see. So in Hebrew, manna is memnun. It's the waters of chaos that are connected to life in the fallen flesh. That which will produce heirship, perpetuity, continuity as a strong base to stand upon. But in this form, just to let you know, this comes from the word, it comes from the word ma. Literally, whatness. What are we to do with our fallen flesh? So when we take a look and see what it means, it comes from what is it? So what, how, anything. This is a word that has questions that are seeking a resolve to our fallen flesh. Memhe from the memnun. So the living water teachings of the mem is to answer the question of what, how, why, when, and even the exclamation of it. So these are questions that we are asking of what we are to do with our fallen flesh. But this goes to show us that instruction came through the living water teachings of Mother, and Father is hidden behind because mem, the constituent letters of the symbol mem are mem and a mem sophite. They have come to answer the question, why or how do we deal with the fallen flesh? Well, now this shows us that risen flesh has been given through the spiritual path that is taught to us in the way of one. So on the inside of lo, which most of the time is translated as not, this is saying the instructions in the way of one are our daily manna, which will take us out of the waters of chaos through the spiritual path where we have new flesh that is no longer fallen but has been risen. So Mother and Father, the strength as pillars and priests and teachers, came to instruct the way of one. So this is really a process of thanking Mother and Father for their instruction, because Yahshua knew that his flesh had been changed, and through supplication and prayer, they had dialogue, which is what instructed Yahshua to begin with. I beseech thee. Then we have the last word where it says, forsaken me. That is the root. And in Hebrew, we have, or the Aramaic word, its original word is to leave, let alone, or to forsake, but it goes to shobek. So there's quit, allow, and remain, and it goes to shobek, forsaking, but again, it takes us right back to leave and to let alone, around right in a circle, to quit, allow, and remain. But what do we see here? And this, I find this all so fascinating to see what is contained within these words. So, leave, allow, or forsake, what has been added? So if the root of this word, as we can see it, what is also being said here? Forgive. I forgive. It is through my strength that you gave me, Mother and Father, that I forgive. That is what he was saying. I forgive. Because he had already been learning, the hypocrite part of him as his ego had to learn the way of one, which lifted him up. And his last departing words was declaring that the strength of the mother and father instructed him in the way of oneness so that he could forgive. Shin bet kuf is the root. And the reason why we have the forgiveness there is shuv. This is part of the Hebrew word teshuvah. And shuv means to turn, return, or to settle and be married. So being married is becoming one. The two who have become one, which causes us to turn, to settle, and to be married. Because we went through the consuming fires that dealt with our fallen flesh beast ego to build ourselves on the inside through the spiritual teachings of the covenant, where we compress light within us through the circle of time, finding the narrow path between the light and dark through that which was hidden, that then gave us the ability to be marked. Remember, this is added on the Father's side, to be marked with His sign, signature, frequency, His covenant, which exempts us from judgment because we no longer judge. This is the place of unconditional love. And He has been given flesh that is no longer fallen, that has been given power. So Yahshua already knew through this process and through instruction that he would live again, because noon has to do with life, continuity, perpetuity as an heir, who had been married and become one, settled, had turned his nature by building himself on the inside through the compression of light. And this is also the word for dragon. This is the wisdom of the dragon. So the representation of the dragon is not what we think it is. It is an elevation of a position that is of the highest and tallest order that has been given power. And in this case, it is new flesh that has been given. So Yeshua's last words had nothing to do with the Father forsaking him, because he had learned the way of one. And again, I'm showing you all the times that the aleph was added over and over and over that you wouldn't see in English. He was saying, I forgive, because I am no longer in the place where I judge. I have overcome my flesh. I have been given risen flesh, and I have been given the power of my Father to overcome. The power means in directions, and I give, because that's what the yod means. I forgive. Completely different way of looking at this. So again, he received the instruction as the face of the hypocrite, which is the ego, that took him through the process that he would be able to see. He wrestled with us through the covenant of fire, and going through the fire, he was given the ability to see what was happening as he cried out in that place of oneness, in that place without having any distortions, because he had taken the time to compress the light, giving him the ability to see that we were all one. He knew that he had to forgive them, because in what they did, they were doing to themselves. They weren't doing it to him. They were crucifying themselves for a lack of understanding that we were all one. And as a deliverer, this frequency comes to those to deliver them. From what? Well, from their lack of knowing that they are one, because they too are the face of the hypocrite. And instruction is meant to empower them, so that on the inside, that which is calling out to them can be made one. Because the hypocrite, the ego, says we're separate. But on the inside, the place where Source dwells, we all instinctively and intuitively know that we are one. This is to lift us up. This is a message to be exalted in the way of one. As Mother is teaching us, as she's connecting us to this, to raise us up and declaring to us that it first is going to be bitter for us to comprehend this in our walk, because we have to deal with the face of the hypocrite of self. But it is meant to raise us to be the first fruit leaders. It is the strength of the Mother and the strength of the Father, the teaching pilasters that give us their strength in order to instruct us to be a part of the manna that would raise us up, change our flesh. It is their prayer that they beseech us to raise us up into that place to be part of the instruction in the way of one, so that we too can forgive, which is our process of turning, settling, remarrying, or marrying in the place of what we would call repentance. It's the full restoration as if something never happened. So in this process, it allows us to compress light so that we can have the wisdom of the dragon and then give this power of forgiveness to others, even in the process of our death and destruction of their flesh, for they know not what they do.